Welcome back to 25 Live at Home. We are super excited that you joined us this week to talk a little bit about Luke 9, verses 28 to 36. So let's hear God's word this morning. Now, about 8 days after these sayings, Jesus took with him Peter and John and James and went up to the mountain to pray. And while he was praying, the appearance on his face changed, and his clothes became dazzling white. Suddenly they saw two men, Moses and Elijah, talking to him. They appeared in glory and were speaking of his departure, which he was about to accomplish at Jerusalem. Now Peter and his companions were weighed down with sleep, but since they had stayed awake, they saw his glory and the two men who stood with him. Just as they were leaving him, Peter said to Jesus, "Master, it is good for us to be here. Let us make 3 dwellings, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah," not knowing what he had said. While he was saying this, a cloud came and overshadowed them, and they were terrified as they entered the cloud. Then from the cloud came a voice that said, "This is my son, my chosen. Listen to him." When the voice had spoken, Jesus was found alone, and they kept silent, and in those 6 days told no one any of the things they had seen. Thanks be to God. So today we're talking about the Transfiguration. That's what this date is, after all. It's the Transfiguration Sunday. Now, the definition of transfiguration is a complete change of form or an appearance into a new and more beautiful or spiritual state. And for example, in this light, the junk undergoes a transfiguration. It shines. Now, that's a big word, and it can mean so very many things. And in our case, for Jesus, it was a time when he was shown to have his true glory as God's Son. Now, I don't know about you, but sometimes it can be hard to see things in a new way. But there are fun ways to do it too, and fun ways to trick your brain and practice this. So, how about we look at some optical illusions? I'm going to show you some today. So the first one that you'll see here is you'll see a very classic one where it looks like it could either be a duck or a rabbit. And as you look at it, if you look at the darker part and look at it as if there was a nose pointed on this round part here, you'll see the back part becomes 2 rabbit ears and you can see a rabbit. But if you just shift your vision a little bit and look at those 2 ears as a beak, you'll see that it turns into a duck. What a fun one. Another example that I can show you here is this one is an old woman or a young woman. Now, if I look at it as if the little frills that stick up there on the top are a feather on top of some black hair, and then you look down, you'll see a little nose, and that could be the young woman. And then she's wearing this fur coat that goes around, and she's got this black necklace going across her neck. But if I change my vision just a little bit, I can change and see that black necklace as her mouth for this old woman, and what used to be the young woman's chin is now the old woman's nose. So just with that little change in perspective, you can start to see a new image. Let's try one more. Now I'm showing you an apple core, and it very obviously is an apple core if you look at just the apple part of it, right? The white in the middle of the apple, the red around the stem and around the bottom. But if I look closely and start to look at it and focus on the pink space around it, I start to notice that there are 2 faces there looking at one another. The noses come the closest together. If you go down just a little bit, you can see their lips, and you can see how they form the bites of the apples. So what can we learn from these pictures, and how can we learn about Jesus through them? Well, we can learn that just as these disciples saw Christ in a new light because of his transfiguration, so too can we see things in a new way and for their heavenly glory. It could be seeing the value in a person rather than what they can't do. So when you look at someone, you might see someone in a wheelchair, and instead of thinking, "Oh man, they can't walk," Look at the value that they bring. Maybe they're a great writer. Maybe they're someone who is excellent at math. Maybe there's someone who is very kind and caring. Look for the things that they can do. Transform your vision of them. It also could be being thankful for the things that you have and not worrying so much about the things that you don't. It can get really easy to want things and to look for things that you don't have. But maybe taking that time to change your perspective and see the things that you do have would be a great way to transform your vision. It could be seeing negativity or sadness as an opportunity to grow closer to God. Finding ways to change your perspective and to look at things in a new way is just what this Transfiguration calls us to. The Transfiguration Sunday is so very special because Jesus had revealed to the world his true nature and to these three disciples. So as we go into this week, I want you to think about how can you transform your vision? How can you start to live as a people who understand and know Christ's transfiguration? Amen. All right, let's join Sara and Nichole for our guest this week.
Hello and welcome to 25 Live at Home this week. We are welcoming Miss Lori Roetlin. Some of you may recognize her from church. She's been around for several years, and she's also come to 25 Live when we were holding it in person and talked to the children and young people about what she does. And so I'm just going to turn it over to her and let her introduce herself and tell us a little bit more about how long she's been here and anything else you want to share.
Okay. All right. Well, my name is Lori, and as Sara said, and I have been attending St. Andrew for, I think, around 15 years or so. And my family consists of my husband, Tony, and then I've got two stepchildren that are ages 27 and 24. And then my son is 23 years old. He just graduated from the University of Iowa. And then my daughter is 17. So we have a yours, mine, and ours family. We're a blended family. So anyway, that's a little bit about us. Yeah.
Can you please tell us a little about what you do for a living?
Sure. So I am a school social worker for Iowa City Schools, and I work specifically with a special education program. And so I tend to work a lot with families. I do work some with kids, but a lot of my work is done with the families and the teachers in the schools that are working with special education students. So I work in all of the elementary buildings, and some of the things that I do in my work are that I help families find the services that they need to help their kids be more successful. So a lot of families have a lot of trouble navigating mental health services and specialized disability services, and because those systems are just so hard to navigate and they require a lot of persistence and time. And for families that move a lot, or their phone number changes a lot, or they have other things going on in their life, like, paying the bills and keeping their housing and those kinds of things. A lot of times those other disability and mental health type services are not the first thing they're giving their attention to. So that's where I come in sometimes and will help make those connections for people. And then another aspect of my work is that I work sometimes with teachers on modifying the work for students in regards to social emotional learning. So trying to help them have lessons for children who have behavior challenges and mental health challenges, helping them find lessons, things that they can do that are hands-on and that also teach social emotional skills to the students. So that's an aspect of my work as well. And prior to doing this work, I was a school-based therapist with elementary students. I did that for a few years. And then prior to that, I worked at the hospital for a long, long time. But anyway, with my work with school-based therapy is where I'm pulling a lot of my experience and my expertise today.
Thank you so much. And I apologize because the last time I don't think I was speaking into the microphone, so hopefully everyone can hear me better this time. But can you maybe suggest some good books or resources about how we can talk to our kids about their feelings? And I don't know if you brought some with you today, or if we can we'll put some up on the screen later. Yeah. But can you tell us a little bit more about some resources that families and children can use?
Yeah. So there's a plethora of books out there to use. I will just highlight a couple of my favorites that I really like to use. The first one I'm going to mention is called Listen to Your Body. And it's a book that teaches the skill of self-awareness. So when we think about self-regulation and working on emotional regulation, that's, if we think about it in terms of like a pyramid, that would be the top tier. The self-regulation and the emotional regulation is at the very top. But underneath that, we have to first have self-awareness. If we don't even know what we're feeling, we can't possibly try to regulate it. So this book, Listen to Your Body, is a book that works on that self-awareness piece. So it's teaching to notice when your heart is racing, notice when you're breathing hard, notice when you're sweating. Some of those things that we just need to pay attention to with our bodies. Another book that I like to use is called Zach Gets Frustrated. And do you know that book? Okay. So it's a little boy talking about some things that make him frustrated. And there's a particular tool that I use. And actually, I'm going to send these to Sarah, so we will have them on the screen as well. Hopefully when I'm talking, you'll see this. But it talks about a frustration triangle, and also recognizing that thoughts and feelings go into our actions, and we need to recognize our thoughts and our feelings, and then our thoughts, and then figure out how that impacts our actions and what action we want to take. So this book kind of focuses on that way of thinking about things. So. Yeah.
Those are awesome. And even our gut tells us a lot of times too.
Yeah.
It's another way to feel what's going on in our body. Thank you so much for sharing those. I want to read that book that you, Zach Gets Frustrated is what you said, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So another question goes really well with that. Sometimes kids or even adults have certain experiences from when they were children or we were children. And those experiences begin to help us identify who we are from maybe some of our actions. It doesn't mean it is who we are, but that's who we begin to identify who we are. A kid who may speak out all the time, then they're the kid in trouble. I'm the bad kid. And that's not. It's just maybe they are, they have something like ADHD or something that doesn't help them control that outburst. Anyway, how can we transform or change these thoughts into new truths? How can we help people? Because those waves that we identify when we're young are hard to break as we get older.
Yeah, I do see that in the work that I do. My heart breaks when I see kids take on a persona of I'm a bad kid. And that's where they live, and that's what they are used to. That's how they have learned to communicate with the world, as a bad kid. And so it is very important that when kids are young, that we help them develop a fuller understanding of themselves, so that they don't just enter the world thinking I'm this person, and so that's how I act. That's how people interact with me. So we want to try and work with that. But so that's a big question. I know, big question, and has a lot to do with our environment, of course, and our what messages we receive from those around us. So it's important as parents that we keep those things in mind as we're parenting, to help our kids have lots of praise for efforts, and not necessarily outcome, but recognizing when they've worked hard at something, say, instead of that's a beautiful picture, say, you really worked hard on that. So recognizing some of those things, is those messages that we give kids are super important. as parents and as adults in their lives. But in terms of how they're feeling, one thing I would say is that it's helpful for kids to understand that they can have a feeling and also be okay. So a game I played with kids a lot when I was working with them in a therapy context is I would toss a ball and we would go back and forth saying to each other, so I would change it up all the time, but in terms of this particular message, one of the things I would say is we would both take turns saying something that is not going well in our lives right now, or something we don't like, or something about the day we don't like, and then we would follow it up with, and I'm going to be okay. So I would toss the ball and I would say, it's really cold outside. I hate cold weather, and I'm going to be okay. And then they would toss the ball back. We had egg salad for lunch today, and I hate eggs, and I'm going to be okay. But just that practice of recognizing that it's okay to have things not be perfect, and we're going to be okay too at the same time. So just understanding that two things can be true at the same time.
I like that a lot. That's a good practice. And the last question that we have for you is kind of along the same lines, but one thing that's sometimes hard as a parent is validating our children's feelings, even if we don't necessarily agree with them, but then also trying to help them find a new way to look at those feelings to maybe help them not get stuck in those feelings, if that makes sense. So do you have any suggestions for parents and others on how to help with that?
Sure. So a couple of things come to mind in regards to that question. One thing I would say is that first and foremost, like I talked about with the triangle and self-awareness, but the first step to working through our feelings is just acknowledging that we have feelings and acknowledging that all feelings are okay. And we need to be able to identify what is the feeling that we're having. So, maybe I'm at school and I'm having trouble with math and I'm really frustrated, but what is the feeling that I'm actually having? Oh gosh, I'm really tired. And I'm also hungry because I didn't have breakfast this morning. So like being able to recognize what it is that I'm actually feeling is important. So something that I've done with kids is something called Color Your Feelings. And I just brought an example of it here, but the idea would be that you would list some feelings that you're having, and then you would color in a picture that would show how much of that feeling you're feeling. So like maybe, and this can be done too with just a blank piece of paper, or you can, draw a heart and then, color in the portion of the heart that, has to do with, I'm feeling hungry this much, and I'm feeling angry this much, and I'm feeling happy this much. Because I can feel happy and angry at the same time. That's okay too. So just being able to acknowledge that I have different feelings and that they're all okay. Because sometimes we fight so hard to not have a feeling. We are fighting to not be scared. We're fighting to not be able to cry when we're sad, or laugh when we're happy because we feel like we don't have the freedom to do that, or something's funny. Whatever it is, we need to have the freedom to be able to cry when we're sad and be mad when you're angry. And it's important how you are mad, of course, and how that impacts other people. And we can learn better ways to express ourselves, but recognizing that feeling is okay is the first step. You need to first be able to identify and be aware of how that feeling is impacting your body and your actions and your thoughts too. So that's the first thing. And then I would say, and I actually asked my daughter before this interview how I do this with her, because I was just curious, how do you feel I'm parenting you to teach you this skill? And she said that something that I do is and now that she tells me, I am very cognizant that I do this because this is a motto I live by. I live by the motto, yes, and. And actually, my license plate says, yep, and, because yes, and was taken.
Oh,
so,
no.
so I put yep, and on my license plate. And that's really a motto that I try to live by, is recognizing that two things can be true at the same time. I can be sad, and I can decide that I'm going to do this hard thing. I can be really not feeling like practicing my cello. This is a thing that comes up a lot for us.
Yeah.
I can really not want to do that. And I can decide it's something I have to do anyway. And just, instead of getting stuck in the, oh, I just don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. Or I'm really, really sad. I can't do anything. Recognizing I can be sad and I can make a choice to do something that may or may not help my sadness, but I can, make a choice to do an action anyway. So
I like that. Yep, and I have to look at your car. I don't think I've seen that in the parking lot. That's
yeah. But so often we think we have to be just one thing. I'm on this side of the issue, and so I'm against you. You have that side, I have this side, and we are against each other. But what we can recognize is that, yes, we both have strong feelings, and we can also find something we agree on.
right.
And so that phrase can be used in so many aspects of life, including feelings.
Right. Yeah. Nope. That's important for all of us to understand, especially now. So, well, we thank you very much for your wealth of information, and we appreciate that you gave us your time and you came in, and especially when it's this cold outside, and you didn't want to, maybe. So,
I appreciate every time that you come in, shared about feelings with the kids and with the sensory fair and all those things. Those are all wonderful ways that we really want our families to have tools in their back pocket to be able to work through. You just never know what's going on, and especially in kids' minds, because we don't know every day what they're dealing with, especially once they're in school. And they don't always have the words. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed our guest this week. We're going to go into our table conversations for you and your families to think about this week. So, first question, what do we do when we get stuck in our thinking or can only see it one way? What are things around us or things in our world that we need to try to see in a new way? What does the Transfiguration mean for us? Why is it so important that Jesus was transfigured? How can God transform us right now? And where are the places, people, and things that we see need to be transformed or need that extra help from God? All right, I hope you enjoyed our message this week, and I hope you enjoyed our time together. We look forward to seeing you next time. Bye-bye.